Afternoon, happy Sunday and welcome back to the OTB channel. Little bit different today. I'm just going to have a bit of a ramble. I took a long weekend, as some of you might have heard, when just after I'd produced my Fedora video, and the intention originally was to produce some other content on Saturday, perhaps another review, perhaps a how-to. Didn't happen. I actually spent Saturday geeking out, playing on my computer, doing some bits and pieces, and I got to thinking, well, why not? At the end of the day, this channel isn't monetized. I do it because I want to. That's the only reason that I do it. And if you don't have time and you want to play with your computer, why not? I mean, I'm not saying I won't ever monetize it. Perhaps if it ever gets to the lofty heights that the likes of Derek of DistroTube has got in terms of subscribers, it's a possibility. The trouble is, I think once it's monetized, you're constantly striving to get new videos out all the time to keep your subscriber count up. And I know myself that I try and produce something on a Saturday, and it can take 4 or 5 hours to get a half-hour clip. It's quite a long process. So I understand why a lot of YouTubers who are monetized become full-time, because it could very easily become a full-time job. Now, the other option as far as putting more content out is, I suppose, live streaming, and someone did suggest that to me. I might do it. I might have a go. I'm off for a week, the first week in October, and I might do a little bit of a test. I'm not sure how I feel about live streaming. I've seen a few live streams where the host has been sat there with very few people in the chat and not a lot to say, and to be honest, it's painful. The other reason is I live out in a little village in the back end of nowhere in Lancashire, and my internet is not brilliant. On a good day, at a time when nobody else is using it, I might get 30 gigs. That can drop down to about 10-15 gigs very easily, with an upload speed of between 3 and 5. I don't know, we'll have to see. I mean, I love living in a village. Waking up where, there's no traffic and there's just sheep and chickens and cows in the fields behind the house. But unfortunately, the internet connection is one of those things that you just have to put up with as not being great if you live out in the sticks. When we first got here, I was renting another place in the village, and we had line of sight to an antenna on one of the fells, and I used wireless ADSL, which worked really well. But when we moved into this house back in January, unfortunately we no longer had line of sight to the ADSL antenna, so we've had to use the phone line. Theoretically it's fibre, or at least fibre to the cabinet, but it's not fibre to the doorstep. It's better than it would have been if it was just on copper cables on telegraph poles, which is what it was like when we first moved here 6 years ago. But it's still not great. But hey, I'll give it a go, and we'll see how it works out. So what have I done with myself today? Let me think. Well, I got up about 7:30. My wife works at the little shop in the village, so she had to get up for work, and needless to say, I got up as well. Made a cup of coffee, cooked myself a breakfast, watched Biddle, went and washed the car, or took the car to be washed, came back and thought, right, let's get in front of that computer and start doing something. Biddle was interesting, I thought. They've been doing a review of Endeavour OS, which I've still got on my hard drive, and generally speaking, the reviews are positive. Although there are a few people who seem to want the online installer to install different desktops. I'm not quite sure why. For me, Endeavour gets you up and running with an Arch system with XFCE. Doesn't really matter what the desktop is after that. Just use Pacman and install whatever you want. I think what people want is something that's a little bit more like Mandriva. Not Mandriva, the other Arch distro that's Manjaro, that's it. Manjaro, that's pretty much ready to go. I don't really want that. I quite like a plain system so that I can then play with it and do what I want. I think there's a few issues as well about people using PMAC. PMAC is good for two things. PMAC is good as an update notifier and also as a method of searching for new packages both in the Arch repos and in the AUR. You shouldn't really use it for updating or even installing packages. Use the command line. It's really simple. Use Pacman to update from the repos. Use Yay to update your AUR packages and to install AUR packages. And if you do it on the command line, you're unlikely to encounter too many problems. I mean, I found my system rock solid. The old issue about when is the year of the Linux desktop raised its head as well. I think we fall into a couple of camps as Linux users. There are those who are evangelists who would love it if Linux became hugely popular and there was a mass take-up by everybody out there. Well, I think there's a problem. One of the problems is the vast majority of computer users out there have never installed an operating system in their life. So it doesn't really matter how good Linux is. They're not going to install it themselves. They're going to live with whatever's on their computer when they buy it. The sort of people who will use Linux are those who have had it installed for them by a friend or who are of a geeky persuasion and tinkerers like myself who install it because we like to be able to fiddle. I have no problem with Windows. I have no problem with Mac. The fact that I can't fiddle with those two operating systems as much, for me, is boring. So I like to play with other operating systems. I like to play with Linux. And over the years, I've become more comfortable in Linux than any other operating system. But I do take what they were saying on Biddle. There's not many bad Linux distributions out there anymore. Whatever you choose is going to probably work. What we're talking about is not even the package manager. What does it look like? What default packages are already installed that you particularly want? And does it suit your workflow? Workflow, that's the word, isn't it? Does it suit the way that you like to work? I don't think there's one distro out there that's particularly better than any other. I like just about everything I install in one way or the other. I have got a soft spot for Debian and Arch and Slackware. And I've not really done much distro hopping in the last 6 or 7 years. That's sort of started to change since I've started this channel. In a way, it's reignited my interest in Linux. And I find myself constantly trying out new distros now. And what I produce for the channel in terms of content isn't necessarily planned in or well thought out. It tends to be, what have I been doing during the week? What have I found interesting? And that's what I'm going to talk about today, really. What was I doing yesterday when I was geeking out and just having fun? Let's have a look. Well, you can see my desktop in front of you. And yes, it is Fedora. And yes, it is installed on the hard drive. And yes, I know that Peppermint was meant to go on the hard drive first. And it will go on my hard drive. In fact, I've got an additional SSD arriving from Amazon this afternoon. But I got to the end of the review yesterday, and I sort of felt that I hadn't looked at Fedora enough, and that I wanted to play with it a little bit more. So I have. It's now installed on one of the SSDs in my USB 3 SSD hub. And I've played with it, I've configured it, I've got it looking how I want, and there you go. I'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute. But I think first I just want to pick up on what I was saying, because I just played back the video, the intro video or clip, and I said there were two types of Linux users, and I only really kind of dealt with the first type, which was people who like to tinker and people who are geeks. There also seems to be another group of people who are evangelists, who would love there to be a national standard or a world standard for Linux, and for there to be one ultimate Linux distro. And Toss from Total OS Today is very much in that camp. And I know where he's coming from, in as much as if the Linux desktop is ever going to get mass adoption, we can't have hundreds and hundreds of distros all competing against each other, albeit in a friendly way. We need one standard that perhaps big companies can get behind. The likes of Microsoft Linux, frighteningly, comes to mind. And okay, I sort of get where he's coming from. For me, Linux has already taken over the world on servers, let's face it. On the desktop, for me, the fact that there are hundreds and hundreds of distros out there to choose from is what I find to be one of the most appealing features of Linux. Yes, it means that it's not mass adopted, and I don't know if this is controversial when I say this, but I don't really care. I like geeking out in my little technical corner with people who've also found Linux, we are not the norm. I used to be a member of a Linux user group in Coventry, and we used to get together just in a social thing, really, have a pizza and a couple of pints and have a natter. And Linux people love Linux. It's their hobby. They want to talk about it endlessly. If I try to talk about it to my wife, I just get a rolling of eyes and, oh, for God's sake, I've got no interest in that. And I can understand that. I can absolutely understand that. But for me, Linux is great. It's reached a standard where just about every distribution I try is exceptional in one way or the other. I haven't come across a bad distro in this particular set of distro hops that I've been doing. So if it remains a little geeky hobby where everything's community produced and there's just a small section of the population that uses it, so be it. All good. Anyway, back to it. You can see that I've got Fedora on the desktop and it's nicely customized. I couldn't actually find the brisk menu, but the Mate menu, which I believe started off in Linux Mint, is available in the repositories. And I like that. It's good. The thing I like about it more than anything else is I can do a quick search and I can find whatever I need straight away, which is what the brisk menu allowed me to do. So yeah, I can live with that. It's not as nice looking as the brisk menu, I don't think personally, but it's good. I've changed my themes round a little bit. I wonder if we can go to administration. Oh no, I know what I need to do. Let's go to the appearance. I've messed about with the themes a little bit. So I've got the flat remix GTK blue dark solid control. The flat remix GTK blue dark window border. And I'm using the deep in dark icon set at the moment. And I think it looks pretty damn spectacular. In terms of what I've installed, oh yeah, I discovered Fedi. I don't even know if I'm still meant to use this as such, but it's a very nice little, I presume it's a script that with the click of a button allows you to install just about anything. Well, a whole range of things anyway. You can see that I've put Skype there and I've also put Google Chrome on. There's a load of development tools that you can install as well. Themes, you can see that many of my themes have been installed through this Fedi. Tweaks, better font rendering. I haven't tried that yet, but I have changed my schedule to deadline, which is meant to be better for SSDs. Utilities, well, archive formats I install through there. Yes, I'm sorry, Microsoft TrueType fonts I've installed as well. Multimedia codecs with the click of a button, and various theme engines. I've not bothered with Adobe. I mean, it's a dead project. I don't see that we need it anymore. What else have I installed? The GIMP, Blender, Discord. I don't know why I've installed Discord, you know. I'm not really a big social media person, but I keep seeing the likes of DistroTube and Big Daddy Linux have got Discord channels, so I really must get down with the kids and go and see what they're all about. But I haven't really tried it for the time being. Office, yeah, there's just LibreOffice there at the moment. Sound and video, I've put Cheese on it. Oh, I've installed Olive today. The only way that I was able to do that was to install Snapd on Fedora. Now, I don't know why installing Snap seems to be a controversial issue. I've had people, when I did it on Debian, say, why on earth would you do that? Well, because it's easy. They're basically a containerized package, and if it's not available in another format, rather than compiling it, I'm going to take the easy way out. So, yes, I installed Snapd. Interestingly, I had to use the little script I put together for Debian to get snaps in the menu. I think because I'm not running KDE or GNOME, there isn't the same integration in Mate for Flatpaks and for snaps. Excuse me. So you have to do a little bit of work yourself. OpenShot and Shotcut, obviously, and yeah, I've installed OBS, as you can see, because I'm I'm recording this on OBS. I found it a fairly simple process to set it up to take advantage of the VA API hardware rendering function, which is much better than trying to render everything in software. So all good so far. I don't think I've done much there. Oh, BLivit-GUI. That's almost their version, by the look of it, of Gparted. I'm really not very keen on that Anaconda installer. I got trying to install Fedora into pre-existing partitions certainly wasn't intuitive. I tried the custom method, and then I tried the advanced with this blivet GUI, and that allowed me to do it. But Fedora really wants you to set up LVM partitions, and I really don't want to do that. I just want to stick it on an ext4 partition somewhere and point the bootloader at the ESP partition. That's about it. What else have I added? Nothing really. I've been looking at the firewall. I'm used to using the UFW firewall, and I could install UFW on Fedora. I couldn't find the GUFW, the GUI portion of it, but UFW is certainly in the repos. But I'm going to try and get to grips with Firewall D, which is the Fedora firewall. On the face of it, it looks more complicated with all its zone files, but actually I think I'm looking at it in the wrong way. I think it's actually probably very easy. I've just set it to the home zone, and I haven't had any problems, and I think I can just open up ports as I need to, as with UFW, so I'm going to live with that. So yeah, Fedora, I'm pretty happy with it so far. Could I live with it? Yeah, I could live with it. It's been solid as a rock. It's only been there for 24 hours, but given that it's been 13 years since I've played with Fedora, I didn't have a problem prettying it up. I've obviously added the RPM Fusion repositories, and I've played around with its look and feel, but I'd do that anyway, so yeah, it's all good. So what else have I been playing with? Oh yes, I know. Let me just open this up in full screen. TLDR. Right. When I first started with Linux, and I obviously joined all the forums that were about at the time, because that was the only way that you could get to know about things. RTFM was quite common. Read the effing manual is essentially what that comes down to. And it's not exactly a nice thing to say. Oh, clean. I wonder why that's happening. Sorry, that's me. I'm just typing clean. Strange. That doesn't actually work on this. Anyway. But I had to use the man pages. I'm sure that you've all used them in the past, but let's just, I don't know, do a man on dmessage, and you tend to get something that looks like this. It's not exactly user-friendly, and I don't think it's meant to be that user-friendly. What it gives you is the various options or switches that you can use with the dmessage command. And I forced myself to use man pages and got used to them. You just stick man in front of the thing you want to look at, and when you want to come out of it, you hit Q. Sometimes, though, it would be quite nice to just be able to pull up a simpler version with perhaps a few examples. And that's where TLDP, or TLDR should I say, comes from. TLDR, so simplified and community-driven man pages. So it's a community thing which is trying to simplify the man pages and to perhaps do a few examples with them. So I've installed this out of the repos, and the way you access it, let's use dmessage as an example. Rather than typing man dmessage, I would type TLDR dmessage, and I suddenly get a much shorter version. So it tells me just run the command to show kernel messages, or to show kernel error messages, or to keep reading new ones, similar to tail -F. Okay. How to look at how much physical memory is available on your system. Show kernel messages one page at a time. It gives little examples, and I really, really like that. I'm not saying I won't use man pages, but I think this TLDR community man page, if you like, is great if you just want a quick look and you want to find something out. I was always told, what does dmessage say if I came up with a particular problem? And if you have a particular problem, as you probably know, if you type dmessage, it brings up all the kernel messages all the way from when you booted the system. Yes, a lot of this replicates what's in syslog, but the advantage of dmessage is it starts registering stuff before the syslog has started. So it can be quite useful for, trying to troubleshoot hardware. So just taking a couple of the options there, rather than just dumping the whole of dmessage on my screen, what's the best way to look at it one page at a time? Well, it says there, use dmessage with less. So, dmessage less. And now I can just scroll through it one page at a time, all the way from the beginning, which is brilliant. If you want to come out of that, you just hit Q and you come out of it. There's also a way to actually monitor dmessage in real time. So dmessage -W, I believe, will bring up dmessage as it is now. Now, the big thing about this is you should be able to see in real time what's happening on your system. So for instance, if I was to plug a USB key into the system, which I'll do now, and there you have it. Corsair Flash Voyager SDD write protect is off. No caching found. Blah, 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 blah. Brilliant. That's all you have to do. And you can see things happening in real time. Love it. How do I stop this? That's a good point. There we go. Control C. So, yeah. TLDR, certainly something to look at. I'm playing with it at the moment, and I know there's a few alternative types of man pages, but it looks pretty good to me. What else was I doing yesterday? Oh yes, the refined boot manager. As you know, I use an Intel NUC, and prior to getting the NUC, I'd always used legacy mode to install all my operating systems. The old BIOS mode, where you simply wrote to the MBR rather than using the ESP partition. However, I'd read somewhere that the NUC didn't play that nicely in legacy mode, so I thought I'd give UEFI a try. And in the process of that, I discovered the refined boot manager. Now, it's not that there's anything wrong with Grub. Grub works absolutely fine. It's just a little bit of bling. And it just makes your boot menu look a little bit prettier. It's also got some practicality to it, in as much as if you screw up your boot sector, you can install Refind on a USB key and just boot from the USB key, and Refind will scan all your hard drives, gather together all the bootloaders, and it will normally allow you to boot. This actually happened when I installed Fedora. You always expect the grub from a new installation to put itself at the top of the priority list in UEFI booting. And so, yeah, Fedora's grub launched rather than my Refind. So I needed to get back into Ubuntu Mate, where I installed Refind, and to run a command which is dead simple, refind-make default, and it just resets Refind as the #1 bootloader. But for some reason, and don't ask me why, Fedora's grub hadn't found Mate, Ubuntu Mate. So I quickly used Refind on my USB key. That found Ubuntu Mate straight away. I booted into it and fixed the problem. I believe, though, it can actually be themed. So I was playing with this yesterday. I set up a quick dual boot system with Debian LXDE and Ubuntu or Xubuntu, and played around with the Refind Manager. So let me just start this. Aha! And here we have it. This is the Refind Boot Manager in its default configuration. Now, this is how it comes out of the box. You just have to do a sudo apt install Refind. It automatically puts itself in the partitions, and there you go. So if you look at the text below, the first entry takes me to grub x64 in the Debian directory. The second one takes me to grub in the Ubuntu directory. There's then a fallback bootloader. There's then the Debian, a direct link to the Debian kernel that I've got installed, and a direct link to the Ubuntu kernel that I've got installed. Now, the way I like to use this, I like to use it to chain load different grubs. So I like to be able to hit Debian and just automatically go to the Debian grub screen. Similar with Ubuntu. So I don't need some of these other entries. And that's fine. If I go over to one of the entries I want to hide, I just click the delete key. I hide it. I can then click the delete key to get rid of that as well. Hide that. And click the delete key to get rid of that and hide that. Oops, that hasn't done it. Let me try again. Yes. There we go. So I have a much cleaner Refind screen. And there are all sorts of things that you can do here, including finding those hidden items and restoring them again. But from the Refind Boot Manager, I was led to believe that you can actually find quite a few themes. That's what happens when I click it. I go into the grub menu. So I was playing about with these themes, and you can find quite a few on GitHub. Just search for Refind Themes GitHub, and you'll get a page with them all there. So let me just make this full screen. There we go. OTB. And essentially what you do, you simply download the folder, the theme folder, or git clone it, and you drop it in your Refind directory. So let me bring up a terminal. I'm just going to go to root. Oops. We'll try again. Fat fingers today. Right, where we need to go. Boot, EFI, Refind. You will need to be root to even CD as this. You can do it with sudo as well. And if you look at what I've got there, I have a themes directory. And if I go into themes, I have a Refind Dark and an Ursa Major theme. And one of the themes didn't require me to actually drop anything into a themes directory. It just wanted me to drop things into the standard Refine directory. Okay, all good. Once you've dropped everything, the directory in there, you see you need to open up Nano and edit the refine.conf file. I'm just doing a page down until we get to the end. And you'll see I've got a couple of themes there. Which should I use? I think I'm going to use this first one, Refine Theme Regular. And I'm just going to remove the comment from that. On the GitHub pages, it tells you what you need to add into your Refine conf, so all good. So when it boots now, it should read the theme from the theme directory there. So let me just and reboot. Let's hope it all works. Oh, there you go. A new theme. Very nice. Let's go back into Debian. I'll probably cut some of this out as it takes a while to get back in. And we'll open up a terminal again. Open up the refine.conf file and we'll have a look at the other theme that I've installed. So we'll put a comment there and take the comment out of there. Save that and reboot. Ah, that's nice. So you can play around with this to your heart's content and do whatever you want to do with it. I like a bit of bling, and for me, why not? If it works, and it's been working solidly now for 5 or 6 months, I'm going to use it. Okay, enough of that. Let's have a quick chat, and we'll call it a day on what's been quite a long little ramble so far. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Bit of a ramble, completely unplanned. And for those who have asked me if I'd do a live stream, it would probably just be exactly as unplanned as that. But I enjoyed looking at what I've been messing about with. Hope you found it entertaining. Until then, thanks very much. Well, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please like and subscribe. It really helps. And stay well until next time.